Where is your next meal coming from? Probably not a question you've thought too hard about today, but it's top of mind for these folks. On this very special edition of the Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast, we're looking at the business of food. Welcome to this very special edition of the Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast. I'm Phil Gaudreau. If you like this show, make sure to like and subscribe. Today, we're chatting with a few very special guests about agriculture, food business, and the workforce that makes it all happen. Before our panel joins us, I'm speaking with Anne Howland, editor of the Eastern Ontario Business Journal. Hi, Anne.
Hey, Phil. Good to see you.
Likewise. So why are we publishing all this great content about the food sector in Eastern Ontario?
Sure. Well, obviously, it's a huge sector in the region, tens of billions of dollars in the province, and it's not a sector that we look at too often in the Eastern Ontario Business Journal. So we really wanted to get a sense of what are some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, as they say, and present those as a bit of a, as we call it, a lay of the land, just to give a sort of general sense of what's happening in this sector and what's important.
Okay. If there was one thing that surprised me a little bit, it was all the ag tech businesses that Neil McMillan identified in our region. Some very cool stuff happening in our backyard. Encourage you everybody to check it out and make sure you read the paper. Anything particularly surprising you learned through the coverage that the team put together?
I agree with you. I thought that part was fascinating. It's really cool to see the combination of technology with such a traditional industry as agriculture and farming. So I think what surprised me was maybe the number of those types of firms that have called Eastern Ontario home, and obviously found Eastern Ontario an attractive place to start their business. In the Ottawa Business Journal, we've talked about a few of them: Fieldless Farms, Grocer, Cultivated. But I was surprised to see that there were so many others, and to read their story about what they're doing and how they can complement traditional farming, I thought was truly interesting.
For those who haven't seen the latest EOBJ edition yet, including all of our lay of the land coverage, where should they head?
They should head to eobj.ca so they can have access to the issue, the digital issue there online. As well, there are any number of distribution points for the hard copy, the good old-fashioned newspaper version of EOBJ, including here in town in Ottawa at City Hall, but many others throughout the region. And we've made a special effort to distribute to many of the farms in the agricultural operations throughout the region as well.
All right. Anne Howland, our editor here at the Eastern Ontario Business Journal. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil.
Now we're going to welcome on our panelists. We've got Patrick Mainville with Collège La Cité and Charlie Foreman of Foreman Farms. Good day, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So for those who aren't aware, let's start off by talking about some of the main differences between traditional and industrial farming and some of the more modern approaches. Patrick, why don't you start us off?
Well, nowadays, through all the technology advancements, a lot of the farmers have access to a lot more data, which they can use then into making better plans for either crop or animal production. So whether it's seeding rates, weed control, different types of mapping applications are available now when you're working in the field. So all these new tools are available for the new type of farming. Now, some of them are still using traditional techniques, but having access to those, again, data management and technology gives them an advantage to be able to work against some of the obstacles that Mother Nature, for example, brings to us with all sorts of different extreme climate conditions and things of that nature. Now, there is some issues surrounding being able to access these technologies or use them properly. So more and more farmers become dependent on these technology companies as well. But definitely better tools and better access to information gives them a heads up on better production and more output for sure.
Okay. So Charlie, I'd love to hear from you about some of your experience over at Foreman Farms, some of the differences you've seen over 5 decades, and whether that divide has grown, how the techniques have changed. Could you talk about that a bit?
Well, definitely a huge difference from when I started. There were some farmers who still had horses. So, you know, we've been talking about all these new tools that we have to use. They're great, but it still comes down to whether we get rain at the right time. So with all the new biologicals and all the new GPS and whatever else that we're all using, or most of us are using, not everybody, if we don't get the rain on time, we still don't produce a profitable crop. Where I am, we're kind of lucky we still get the rains when we need them, but we've seen all around the world now droughts, how they affect the markets going up and down. And of course, we're all in touch with those markets where we never used to even know the markets existed. And so, yes, on the one hand, we have all these new tools to use, including being able to check the markets worldwide and see what's going on. But it still comes down to the weather and market demand. So when something like these wars happen, that just throws everything sideways. It's exciting. It's made farming a lot easier, enjoyable, more stressful maybe, but definitely more enjoyable than grabbing a pitchfork and cleaning out calf pens all day long.
Oh, come on, Charlie. You don't look a day over 25. What are you talking about? But look, there's been a lot of hype in recent years, and even in this quarterly edition of the EOBJ about vertical farming, controlled environment agriculture, growing indoors type of idea. I'd love to hear both your thoughts. Patrick, we'll start with you. Do you think these technologies and approaches are here to stay?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that vertical farming, for example, is here to stay. With decrease in agricultural lands, more and more people living in the city, the advancement of technology, the development of very efficient LED lights, the new urban agriculture is here to stay. So more traditional rural agriculture is highly relevant. It's still where we produce the most. However, with some of the challenges, urban agriculture, vertical, aeroponic, hydroponic, rooftops, those are some of the new tendencies that I think are there to stay. And they have been proven because obviously they saw, they began, before the pandemic, they actually, we increased vertical production during the actual pandemic. And we still feel that that's a new way of producing sufficient volume of food and for city populations. Now, it does come with some challenges, but as far as producing fresh, local, accessible fruits and vegetables, I think it's definitely a great potential for diversification of our agricultural industry.
Sure. So, Patrick, there's something I want to clarify about what you're saying there about the increase in production. Are you talking about our neck of the woods here in Eastern Ontario, or are you talking a bit more broadly about Canada? Are we talking industry-wide?
I recently read that Montreal is one of the cities with the most rooftop gardens and vertical production in North America. So that was actually quite astonishing to me. There's more and more growing units in parking lots of grocery stores all over Ottawa and Toronto now. So there's definitely a willingness to produce locally and produce in the urban setting. And these are some of the opportunities that we have and some of the techniques that have been proven for quite a while now. So yeah, I've seen it around here in Ottawa. We're actually in a process of potentially testing out some growing units ourselves at the college with partners here in Ottawa. So we're looking at purchasing one or two cells and actually producing vertically with our students in our food and vegetable production techniques program.
Charlie, you've got some greenhouse growing on your farm, of course.
So yeah, we have a hydroponic tomato greenhouse, and I think that is definitely here to stay for a long, long time. The vertical challenge is the different types of crops that they can grow are very limited, and that's still fine as long as there's a market. The word access came out, and it's access from both sides. So the producer has to be able to access a good market that's going to be sustainable for him to actually make money. And of course, then the retail customer has to be able to access as well. And it's a little difficult getting into these big chains for anybody who doesn't have any size to them at all. So the smaller vertical unit is probably going to be somewhat challenged. They're going to have to create their own customer base, which is always a problem, especially if you're closer to a big store. That big store is going to draw the customer base to themselves, even if they don't have the local produce. So that's always a challenge. And then the biggest problem that I see is it's fresh and it's new, and you've got people who are excited about it. It's the labor part. So as it grows, where did the people come from to do the managing of it? And as long as they're making reasonably good money, they'll stay. But if it gets into a larger situation like the hydroponic greenhouses in Leamington or ours, you have to go to offshore labor, and that to me doesn't seem very sustainable, even though I'm participating in it. In the long picture, far out, I can't see how we can keep on depending on offshore labor. It doesn't make any sense to me, because the people that are coming from wherever, could be Mexico, Guatemala, it doesn't, Jamaica, they're making reasonably good money when they send it back home. But the problem is that as they send that money back home, the quality of life for their families goes up and up, and then their kids at some point going to say, I'm not going there, I can do this because I'm more educated. We could talk about that for quite a while. It gets quite complicated.
We've talked a little bit about the labor issues in previous editions of the Eastern Ontario Business Journal podcast, hitting all kinds of different sectors, of course, and especially an interesting challenge in agriculture. Something that's been in the news a bit lately is the high percentage of farmer retirements expected in the next decade in Canada. So I'm curious, Charlie, you've been at it for 50 years. I read online you started Foreman Farms in 1973 with your wife. Congratulations on that. What's the future for Foreman Farms?
So I had two sons who were farming with us. Now they're farming by themselves, which I'm
interesting.
just as excited about. So they're doing their own thing. They're doing. The one's into beef cattle, the other is into dairy and cash crop, and they're both doing quite well. So here I am left with a farm that could end with me, or hopefully sell it on to somebody else who's excited about it as I am. So it's a bit of a conundrum. The transition plan is really doesn't exist at this point in time. I'm still healthy, and so is my wife. We have tremendous employees, tremendous markets. Going to carry on for quite a while yet, I hope.
So let's take it from a micro level out to the macro level of industry. Patrick, you have a number of programs at Collège La Cité to help prepare workers for the food production environment and the associated fields. I saw cannabis production in there as well for those interested in growing a different kind of crop. How are you preparing at the college level to take that next generation of workers, get them the right skills? What are they learning today? And how do you get people excited about these opportunities?
Yeah, so back in the day, obviously, we would rely on the sons and the daughters of farmers to become the next generation of farmers. But times have changed, and that doesn't suffice. So we need to go about recruiting and interesting other individuals in society that could actually play a key role in the next generation of farmers and business owners. So we leverage technology, we leverage creativity, entrepreneurship, individuals that are attracted by those competencies or those topics into the agricultural field. So that's part of our enrollment strategy. So, for example, we have a 2-year electrical engineering technician program. Well, with farms now being pretty much automated, some of them actually ended up finding jobs, opportunities to repair, install, monitor, program PLCs on farms. Well, then they got interested in actually farming in itself. So there's all sorts of different strategies to interest people into farming. And then some of them have actually started their own businesses, their own crop production or animal production farms over the years. They've come back and taken an agricultural program first at our college. But people that are interested in optimizing production, on sustainable production of food, anybody that has any ties to the land, being outdoors, being wanting to spend using quality resources, are all types of individuals that we attract to our program. So I'm quite optimistic. Enrollment this year is actually, we were oversubscribed. So that's a great problem to have. Mm-hmm. So there's more and more people interested in agriculture, but not just the traditional approach and production methods. They want to find out about the new technologies and the new ways of producing good quality food in a safe environment And that's where I think on the long run, we'll be able to produce and train as more and more people in the agricultural industry.
Yeah, and I want to come back to you for a second, Patrick, because as we were getting ready for this show, you mentioned urban agriculture is a great way for families to support themselves. Seeing a lot of conversation about it. You know, even we've got a tiny little garden here, though certainly not as advanced as a number of our friends. But at the same time, we've got this housing affordability challenge. We've got people being driven to condos, apartments, smaller dwellings. Because of affordability. So, how do you square those two goals of trying to help people be more food independent, but doing so with less space and particularly less green space?
So just before the pandemic, we decided to review our curriculum and revamp some of our core competencies of our program and include urban agriculture techniques. We've seen a lot of research projects being publicized and published about being able to be anywhere from 30 to 80% self-sufficient in the city by producing fruits and vegetables, perhaps having a few hens that lay eggs, and obviously relying on a local farmer and then sharing, one beef cattle or one pork per year, and then having access to meat as well. So small scale, intensive fruit and vegetable production seems to be working. People have found the right recipes and the right methods of actually controlling pests and producing good quality fruits and vegetables at home in the city. There's a bunch of models out there that they can really rely on, and whether it's again on the roof, in a green space, in a park near a high density residential area, in their own yards. Raised beds have become the norm now. Every home has a raised bed in their backyard, regardless of the square footage of your condo, your apartment. So I think people are really enjoying producing fruits and vegetables at home, and they're actually teaching their kids as well, which is great because my wife's in the works for a school board here in Ottawa, and she's seen a change in how kids actually enjoy and know more about agriculture and fruits and vegetables. So I'm quite confident that that was really beneficial for everybody to produce their own fruits and vegetables at home during the pandemic, and have stuck with it since then. So.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been great to chat with you about the changing food environment in Eastern Ontario and in Canada as well.
Thank you very much.
Our thanks to Patrick Mainville with Collège La Cité and Charlie Foreman of Foreman Farms for their great discussion today and for their time. And as well, thanks to Anne Howland from the EOBJ for starting us off today. This very special edition of the EOBJ podcast is made possible by the following sponsors: the County of Leeds-Grenville, the City of Cornwall, Collège La Cité. For important business news affecting Eastern Ontario, the people, the businesses, and the farms, be sure to check out obj.ca. I'm Phil Gaudreau. Thanks for joining us.